Have you ever felt as if life keeps pressing you from all sides? Expectations at work, disappointments at home, your own inner doubts, until you wonder whether there is anything left of you that is not cracked? Perhaps you have prayed for relief, but instead of a gentle answer, you received more pressure, more delays, more heat. It is easy in such moments to believe that pain is pointless and struggle is a sign that you are failing. But what if pressure is not punishment? What if heat is not hostility? What if there is a wiser process at work, one you cannot yet see from inside the whirl of your days? Imagine your life as clay, unimpressive at first glance, messy under the fingernails, stubborn in your hands. Clay cannot choose the pressure of the potter's palms, and it certainly cannot schedule the fire of the kiln. Yet without both, it never becomes a vessel capable of holding water, light, or fragrance. The very forces it resists are the ones that give it symmetry, strength, and a purpose beyond itself. Stay with me to the end of this story. We will step into a quiet workshop, watch a seasoned potter turn ordinary earth into something unexpectedly beautiful, and discover why the wheel's spinning and the kiln's flames are not your enemies. If you have ever feared that hard seasons are wasting your time, this parable may change how you see the pressures you carry and how you walk through the heat that waits ahead. Long ago, in a small village nestled between rolling hills, there lived a potter whose hands were always covered in dust. His workshop was modest, just a wooden shed with a spinning wheel and a brick kiln that glowed with fire late into the night. Villagers often passed by, hearing the thud of clay being struck, the rhythm of the wheel turning, the crackle of flames. They respected him, for his jars held their water, his bowls carried their food, and his lamps brought light into their homes. One day, a young man wandered into the village. His shoulders sagged as if he carried the weight of invisible stones. Life had not been kind to him. Each attempt to build something of worth had collapsed. Each dream had slipped through his fingers. Rejected by peers and haunted by the sting of failure, he had grown weary of himself. Patience was foreign to him, and perseverance felt like a cruel demand. In truth, he wanted success without struggle, glory without wounds. When he heard of the old potter, curiosity pulled him toward the humble shed. Perhaps, he thought, this man who shaped earth into beauty might reveal how to shape a broken life into something better. Yet as he entered, the first thing he saw was not beauty, but brutality. The potter slamming clay onto the wheel, pressing it until it collapsed, striking it again and again. It seemed more like punishment than artistry. The young man frowned. Why must the clay suffer so much? Surely beauty can come without such force. His question, though spoken softly, carried the longing of his own heart. To find a way of becoming strong and valuable without having to endure the fire of hardship. The potter looked up from his wheel, his eyes calm yet piercing, as if he had heard the young man's question before it was ever spoken. Wiping his hands on a cloth, he motioned for the youth to come closer. You wonder why the clay must be pressed so harshly, the potter said in a voice both gentle and firm. Sit and watch carefully. The wheel teaches lessons that words alone cannot. The young man lowered himself onto a stool, arms folded, skeptical yet curious. Before him, the potter picked up another lump of raw earth. It was formless, stubborn, unwilling to bend. With steady hands, the craftsman slammed it hard against the wheel. The sound startled the youth. See, the potter explained. If the clay refuses to yield, it cannot be shaped. Every strike, every push is not cruelty, it is invitation. The clay must surrender before it can become. The wheel began to spin, slow at first, then faster. The potter's palms pressed the clay, guiding it upward, narrowing it, widening it, until the beginnings of a vessel emerged. Yet just when it seemed complete, he crushed it down again into a shapeless mass. The young man gasped. "Why destroy what was nearly finished?" The potter smiled. "Because it was not ready. If the walls are uneven, the fire will expose the weakness and shatter it. Better to begin again than to let it collapse later." He placed the vessel aside and leaned toward the youth. His eyes glowed in the flicker of the kiln's fire as he whispered words that cut deeper than any hammer. "If the clay resists pressure, it remains mud. If it refuses the fire, it never becomes a vessel. And if you, young man, avoid struggle, you will remain unformed." The words fell heavy, echoing not just in the workshop, but in the hollow spaces of the boy's soul. The young man felt a sting in his chest as the potter's words settled like embers on dry ground. Something in him resisted. Pride bristled at the thought of being compared to a lump of clay. Yet another part, tired of failure, aching for meaning, leaned forward, desperate to understand. "Then teach me," he said quietly. "Show me what it means to be shaped." The potter nodded, placed a lump of clay into the youth's hands, and guided him to the wheel. At first, excitement sparked within the young man. He pressed the clay between his palms, spinning the wheel with his foot. But within moments, the clay buckled, slid sideways, and collapsed into a muddy heap. Frustration tightened his jaw. He tried again. Too much pressure this time, and the clay tore apart. Laughter drifted in through the open window from a few village boys who had stopped to watch. "Look at him," one jeered. "He can't even make a bowl fit for a dog." The young man's face burned. Shame urged him to leave the workshop, to abandon the task as he had so many times before. Yet the potter said nothing, only watched with a steady gaze. Slowly the youth wiped his brow and tried again. His strokes grew gentler, his touch more patient. Still the clay resisted, still it cracked, but with each failure he learned the subtle balance between pressure and release, strength and surrender. Days turned into weeks. The young man returned to the shed each morning, his clothes streaked with earth, his hands blistered but steadier. At times he succeeded in shaping something recognizable, only to have the potter crush it down again. Anger flared. "Why must you destroy everything I make? Isn't it good enough?" The potter's reply was unwavering. "Not yet. To stop here would be to leave you fragile. What survives the fire must first be strong in form." At last came the day of the kiln. The young man placed his carefully shaped vessel inside the blazing chamber. The flames roared like a wild beast, the heat fierce enough to sting his face even from a distance. He winced as cracks appeared in the clay, pieces breaking away. Despair rose in his chest. All that work, ruined in an instant. But when the fire subsided, he saw something unexpected. The vessel that remained was not destroyed. Its surface shone with a glaze of strength, its body no longer fragile mud but solid, enduring, capable of holding water without leaking a drop. The young man's breath caught. For the first time he understood. The fire had not been his enemy. It had revealed what was true, burning away weakness, leaving only what could endure. In that moment, the laughter of the boys, the sting of failure, even his own pride faded into silence. What remained was a strange new strength inside him, not loud or boastful, but steady, like the vessel cooling in the kiln's glow. He turned to the potter, eyes wide, heart trembling with a realization that would mark him forever. The young man stood before the glowing kiln, the vessel cooling inside, his own soul trembling as if it too had just emerged from fire. He turned to the potter, searching for words, but none came. The silence was filled by the steady crackle of embers, a rhythm as ancient as time itself. The potter broke the quiet. "Do you see now?" he asked softly. "The wheel is not punishment. The fire is not cruelty. Each strike, each spin, each flame is part of a greater purpose." The young man lowered his gaze. "All my life I ran from struggle. Every failure, every disappointment. I cursed them as signs that I was weak or forgotten. But now I see they were shaping me." His voice trembled with humility, each word drawn from the depths of revelation. The potter picked up the vessel, turning it slowly in his weathered hands. Light from the fire danced across its surface, revealing patterns no brush had painted, colors drawn out only by heat. "Clay that avoids pressure remains mud," he said. "Clay that flees the fire crumbles into dust. But clay that yields and endures becomes something greater than itself, a vessel that can hold life for others." A deep hush filled the workshop. The words did not merely teach, they pierced. The young man understood. Trials were not obstacles, but instruments, not barriers, but bridges. Pain had not been wasted, it had been working. He thought of his past, the failures, the ridicule, the lonely nights when hope seemed lost. None of it had destroyed him. In truth, it had refined him. The very weight that once threatened to crush him had been shaping his soul into something capable of carrying light, water, and truth to others. The potter placed the vessel gently into the youth's hands. Its warmth seeped into his palms, and with it came a conviction that the fire of life, though fierce, was never without meaning. "Remember this," the potter said, his voice both command and comfort. "Fire does not destroy. It reveals strength. Struggle does not end you. It begins you." The young man nodded slowly, a quiet fire now burning within him. For the first time in years, he felt no urge to escape the weight of life. Instead, he welcomed it, knowing that every trial was part of his shaping, every flame another step toward becoming who he was meant to be. He stepped out of the workshop into the cool night air, carrying not just a vessel of clay, but a new heart, formed, fired, and ready to serve a greater purpose. The night air wrapped around the young man as he stepped outside, the stars overhead glittering like sparks from the kiln still burning behind him. In his hands, the vessel glowed faintly, warm from the fire, yet steady, strong, and whole. For the first time, he did not resent the weight he carried. He embraced it. He realized that life had been shaping him in the same way. The hands that pressed him, the failures that crushed him, the heat that seared him, none of it had been wasted. Every disappointment, every trial, every sleepless night had been part of a wheel turning, molding him into something more resilient than he ever thought possible. He thought of those who still struggled, friends who cursed their hardships, neighbors who feared their failures, even strangers who believed pain was pointless. How he wished they could see what he had just seen, that the fire is not there to break us, but to reveal the beauty hidden within us all. He lifted the vessel toward the sky, its surface catching the starlight, shining as though it held a flame of its own. And he whispered into the night, as much to himself as to the world. Do not despise the shaping. Do not curse the fire. One day, the very struggles you dread will become the reason you shine. The road before him stretched long, but it no longer seemed dark. For he understood now that every turn of the wheel, every burst of heat, was carrying him closer to the person he was meant to be. And with each step, He carried the quiet confidence of clay transformed, fragile once, but now a vessel of strength and light. If this story stirred something within you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who may be walking through their own fire right now. Someone who needs to be reminded that struggle is not the end. It is the shaping. Let them know they are not being broken. They are being formed. And if you found hope here, I invite you to stay with us for more. Subscribe to this channel for inspiring stories that remind you of your worth, your strength, and your purpose. Together, let's create a space where trials are no longer feared, but embraced as the very path to becoming whole.